You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about exciting, creative, and innovative ways of living. Produced in Santa Barbara, California, Sustainable World focuses on positive solutions to environmental challenges, solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe, how to plant a food forest, restorative design, or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned to Sustainable World Radio. I'm Jill Cloutier. You seem to me like you are definitely a plant person, a plant lover, a flower lover, essential oil lover. How did you first get interested in the plants?
I think it was wonderful that we had the experience of a cottage in northern Ontario, and I had the freedom to just wander around in the woods and pick raspberries, and I'd come home with little handfuls, and my mom would make little tarts or pies, depending on how much I brought home. And just like hours and hours I would spend like moving plants, touching plants, and kind of like designing a lot of forts in the forest. And then luckily I went to a school where we had a forest, and then my dad would take us to Nova Scotia every summer where we would just spend all day outside and making more forts and picking more berries. So I think that was the foundation for sure.
And so you just really spent a lot of your childhood kind of communing and connecting or just playing with the plants.
Yeah, and I just loved them so much. And I loved doing things with them and making them and mashing things up and making mud pies and mixtures and like putting mud on and then jumping in the lake and just like anything I could do. Seaweed, you know.
Yeah. Now, I read too on your website how for a science fair, a school science fair, you actually used essential oils to recreate Nina Ricci's L'air du temps, which I used to love. How did you do that, and how was that received at the science fair?
Yeah, that was really fun. It was, I think, around grade 8 or 9, and science was getting kind of boring. And it was the 80s, so if you can imagine, perfume and cosmetics, I think, were at a bit of an all-time high. So I just would go around and collecting all these perfumes, and I really loved mixing them, mix them up and do different things. And one day at the library, a book fell out that was like how to make Egyptian cosmetics. Like, that's really cool. So it talked about like these things called essential oils. So we drove to a larger city to get some, and then just through smell and play, I took the oils that I knew and recreated L'air du temps because I had quite a familiarity with all these perfumes, although, you know, they were synthetic at the time, but I thought, oh, it's so fun, I can do it the old-fashioned way. And it was very well received. I remember that we got a 90. Had a little partner. Yeah.
That's so cute. Now, for listeners who may not know what an essential oil is, could you give your definition of what those are?
Yes, essential oils are the steam distillates of various plants. Now, not every plant can make an essential oil. It's more the ones that have this oil molecule in them, and we can also think of them as secondary metabolites. So they're kind of like a blood in the plant, and they've been responsible for the evolution of the plant, but not the survival of the plant. So they're a very special aromatic molecule that runs inside the plant like a blood and also is released in the air surrounding the plant and emits many secret messages as this sort of pheromone communicator to other plants, to insects, and other species.
Wow. So what when we brush across maybe a jasmine flower or lavender bush, I think of, are the essential oils what's kind of coming out of the leaves and the aromatic part?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in citrus, it's in between the rind and the fruit.
Oh, wow.
It's sometimes a thing that squirts out of you, but that isn't a pulp.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
And you made me think too of like when you brush past a plant, because it also, to me, that evokes something that we can open up here, which is sometimes we think of our relationship to plants or smelling or essential oils as this like, I am now going to smell and And what we forget is there's a relationship going on. So it is, it's the smeller and the smells coming together as this union. And every time it's different.
Yes, it definitely, and it's so enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, I love plants and I love flowers, and I know you do too. So you recreated the perfume for your science fair, and then after that, did you just kind of immerse yourself, or was it more of a longer process where you gradually came back to the plants?
It was a little bit of a longer process. So that was like grade 8 or 9, and that was really fun. And I had the oils, and I still had like just this crazy bathroom. It had like everything in it, and then it was fun because like the Body Shop came up, and we thought, it's so natural, pineapple face wash, and so that was pretty exciting. But then when I was 18, I discovered, that you don't have to like necessarily eat meat, and you can kind of be on a plant-based diet. And when I saw the structure of that truth, what also came to me was understanding the whole structure of the supermarket. And then within that structure, the whole structure of the beauty care industry. From going from a devout, like, playing with everything, realizing that the nature of it was synthetic, and there was no pineapple in the pineapple face wash. And the dewberry was not a plant.
I've never seen a dewberry bush in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was fun because it was all like really like in a matter of days, just like this big living truth came in, and it was really fun to discover that all that could be dismantled. And then from there, I was like, the essential oils. I'm going to make my own perfumes and lip balms. So then I was doing that all throughout university. And then, that was like 4 years. And then right like a few weeks after I graduated, I opened up a store. And throughout my last year of university, I've been contacting all these farmers all around the globe because the internet wasn't really happening then. So I'd be writing everybody letters. And I really wanted to smell these ancient distillates that weren't available at the health food store. I wanted to know Immortelle. I wanted to know the neroli and the angelica. And so I would write them all, and I'd get samples from everywhere, including really simple samples like tea tree and bergamot. And they were so gorgeous. And then I was realizing that the structure of the essential oils that were available also kind of had an industry behind it, because essential oils and aromatherapy, while seeming niche, are actually part of a huge industry called the food and flavor industry. So what was mostly being rebottled and sold were kind of all coming from these like New Jersey warehouses where they would do the food and flavor industry, and the distillates would be like mass kind of commercialization of like peppermint, and they'd be extracting and folding and getting the menthol because they would use it to do cigarettes or Tropicana orange juice. And also, even though perfumes are totally synthetic, the modern commercial ones, they're still using some raw material to play with to create synthetics and to create these things called nature identicals. So what I realized is that about 2% of the world's growth of essential oils, and that's probably gone up a bit now, is this really beautiful, artisan, real-to-the-feel distillations that are done by real hands, real farmers, and where they're doing long distillations, sometimes even over a few days, and that they're getting lower temperatures, and they're getting a lot more of the properties in the oil. Where with a long, slow distillation, you might end up having like 800 different biochemical components. And with a short, fast distillation, you could just be kind of getting 300.
Wow. That's amazing. And how does our body, I assume that our body reacts to these properties in the essential oils?
Yes, and I think in ways that obviously we can't even comprehend. Diversity is obviously amazing because we've got millions of cells and millions of like friendly bacteria and all these millions of things in our bodies. So feeding them a diversity and a wholeness, so you're kind of getting more of the plant in that aspect. And that's an even interesting note where they're even confirming it a lot with science right now. By using essential oils in combination, you get these beautiful stellar they're kind of like constellations in the sky. And that diversity and synergy is also very useful for the body.
And Nadine, I would assume too then that these synthetic perfumes and synthetic oils, how does the body react to those? Do you know? I wouldn't think.
I don't even know fully, except obviously allergies, and they really are just like some kind of combination. I haven't gone into it, so don't really mind, but it is like petroleum and alcohols, synthetic alcohols, and different creatures like that.
I think 90% of aftershaves have petroleum distillates in them. And have you ever been trapped, especially like on an elevator or something, with someone that has doused themselves with the perfume? It's just like, I want to flee with the artificial perfumes. It's just too much, and you can almost sense it's chemical based.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking about slow distillation. So it sounds like there's an industry and an art to essential oils.
Yeah, it's kind of like the wine industry. And an interesting thing is, like, one reason why they were syntheticized is because it's kind of that, like, wild nature. It can't be tamed again. It's like, how do we get the consistent distillation year after year? Well, we've got to make it standardized and all that kind of stuff. And then it's interesting because after the First World War and when synthetics really started coming in, that's when the bifurcation occurred. And the essential oils were once seen as these medicinal oils that were good for health, as well as perfume, started branching off and becoming just more in this realm of like femininity and frivolity and really without any meaning. And then medicine started getting pharmaceuticalized as well.
Interesting. So the shift occurred in aromatherapy and essential oil production. So really, we want to return to slow perfumery.
Yes. Yeah, slow perfumery. I hadn't thought of that one. Yeah.
It's true. And, to me, it seems when I think of people making essential oils, I think of Europe. And has it been more traditionally a part of European culture to make the oils, or is it happening as much in the States and Canada as well?
It's happening really all over the world. I'd say Europe was really going strong up until 1900 and something, like maybe around 1918 when the synthetics started coming in. And now, if you go to those parts of France, you're going to be like overwhelmed by synthetic fragrances coming out of factories. So
it's changed.
Just to keep that as a memory, yeah. I mean, I gather essential oils from all over the world, like Madagascar, Australia, New Zealand. France has some lovely ones up in the mountains. I've got some lovely family distillers, Corsica, Italy, South Africa, California, Canada has some great tree distillations.
Wow. So these oils then, when they're natural oils and created naturally, you can use them not only for perfume but also medicinally. Is that correct?
That is totally correct. And really, as the ancient Egyptians believed, perfume is the medicine.
Oh,
so it's like even when I make things, it's like, there's really no division. Like, this is good for your skin, it's good for your well-being, it's good for your smell. Like, it's kind of like I do create different products, but really it's ultimately like just for the whole thing.
Wow. So Nadine, tell us about some of your favorite essential oils and maybe what they're good for or what we can use them for.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite questions to answer is that like desert island question, if you could pick one. And it actually would be peppermint. Peppermint is just so useful. You can put it in water, just like one drop. It's really great for oral care, and it has this really cool cooling ability. So if you have a headache, or even if you just have a burn or a nick or a cut, it cleans it as well as just takes the sting out. Or even if you had any kind of bite or anything, you just apply one drop of peppermint. Really so useful. Because all of the fun thing about essential oils, in which people, sometimes it's hard to wrap their brain around it, but all essential oils, every single one, is antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral.
Wow.
So whether that's rose or geranium or peppermint or eucalyptus, lemongrass, every single one is antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal.
I've heard of thyme oil being antiviral and antibacterial. I think of the more pungent, savory ones, but it's nice to know the floral essential oils are as well. Wow.
The best essential oil to use is the one you have.
Mm-hmm. And how can people use them? And then we'll get back to your top 5 list of essential oils.
Sure. Well, the main way to use them, generally there's inhalation or application. So through inhalation, that could be putting a drop in between your hands, rubbing them, and putting them, cusping them over your nose. I'm doing that right now, but nobody can see me. Or inhaling them. So then that could be through a room diffuser, getting them into the atmosphere, or just simply inhaling out of the bottle. If you're on a plane, you can just stick that bottle right under your nose, and it will purify the air that you're breathing in. And also just in that pure inhalation, things transform in the mood and the brain. Essential oils have the ability, like nothing else on the planet, to pass the blood-brain barrier. They're lipophilic, so that means they'll go through fat and tissue faster, like in seconds.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So you can really use them for deep healing, it sounds like.
Very deep healing. And they're so useful, and they have such a multitude of uses. And the other way, general way, is through application. So that could be through massage or just in your skincare, because they're very active and potent. So they can really help generate new skin cells. Or putting them in the bath, putting them on the bottom of your feet. So those are the 2 general things: inhalation, application, and then from there you can use your imagination.
I love that. That's a great motto.
Yeah.
What about, should you apply them directly to your skin or dilute them?
That's a great question. And I find if you're working with 100% genuine and authentic distillations, pretty much you can use them undiluted, except for cinnamon and thyme would be pretty hot. Generally, you don't have to dilute them if they're real. What I would say, though, is do a little patch test right in your in the crease of your elbow and see how it is with your skin. But most people are fine with all the oils. Now, that doesn't mean you need to use them straight up, because they're very effective even in like a 2% dilution. But sometimes there's just times when you kind of want they're volatile in nature, so they're not fatty, even though the word essential oil sounds like they'd be oily. But the thing is, they're lipophilic, they're volatile, so they have an evaporative quality, and they're not fat if you rub them in your hands, if they're pure. And so sometimes you just want that, like on your chest and stuff. Sometimes you don't feel like having the oil diluting them. But other than that, diluting them is also really great.
And how would you apply it? Say that you, for skincare for your face, can you use them for that?
Yeah, you could use about a 5% dilution and just use something like a beautiful oil, like a virgin coconut oil or virgin olive oil or jojoba oil. Mm-hmm. And then you can just use 5% essential oils. Work with the ones that are steam distilled. And it'll be great. You can make your own skincare at home, and you can make your own perfume.
That's lovely. And, I slather myself with essential oils every day.
Yeah.
So
we call that live embalming.
I love them. And right now I really am into lemongrass and jasmine together, which is so nice. It smells so good. But this leads me to something I've been wondering about is, I know you just said steam distilled, use those for skincare. Yeah. What about the absolutes? And maybe explain to listeners what that is.
Yes, and you just remind me with lemongrass that some of them are photosensitive. So all the citrus plus angelica and neroli, you don't want to use and then sit in the sun, because there's a relationship between that, and they will burn the skin.
Oh, that's good to know.
So it can be used undiluted, but not in the sense if you're going to be going out in the sun.
Good thing it's been raining here for the past month.
Yes.
Or I would have been cooked.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's good to know. So, and what about absolutes? What are those?
Absolutes are distilled a different way, and those are generally used for some of the ones. All the essential oils range in how much essential oil they yield. Lavender, there's a lot of yield. It's very easy to steam distill. Jasmine, for example, there's not as much yield. That's why it's more expensive. Or rose, it takes 40 roses to make 1 drop of oil.
Wow.
So absolute is a way. They actually use hexane to remove it, And that hexane is removed completely, 99.99%, and they recycle it over and over again. However, on a level of purity, for me, those ones are better for perfumery, for smell, and they're lovely, but for the sort of more medicinal aspects or skincare aspects, I find that they're not as active as the steam-distilled ones.
Okay.
So, for example, Rose Absolute is great for a perfume, but it's the Rose Auto that you want for cellular repair and for beautifying the face. And it is actually one of the most medicinal oils, one of the most analgesic, and one of the most antiseptic oils. It's close to clove oil in its antiseptic properties.
So by using the hexane, they actually don't have to use as many flowers? Does it kind of take...
It just makes the plant yield more to the process.
The absolutes, they seem to be more like the delicate flowers, like tuberose or jasmine.
Yeah. Some of those still can't be steam distilled. Like there's sort of yet to be a way to do a steam distilled tuberose. Rose, though, is available steam distilled, and neroli is a steam distilled oil. Now, Orange Blossom Absolute is the absolute, and that's gorgeous in perfumery, but not necessary in skincare. And then neroli is gorgeous in skincare.
Interesting. I've always wondered what that meant, the absolute and the steam distilled.
Yeah, it's a good question. And then there's the attars, because there's the Rose Auto, and then there's the attars, which you might not have had a question about.
What does that mean? I've seen it, yeah.
That's a beautiful ancient method of distilling through sandalwood. So sandalwood becomes a way that the flowers can yield, and so together, roses and sandalwood are distilled, or jasmine and sandalwood are distilled, and that way you can get a pure steam-distilled jasmine, but it's partnering up with the sandalwood. But the sandalwood's really subtle and delicate, so that's a fun way to use a pure jasmine, and that method is ancient and invented by Farudian Attar, who was a Persian poet, perfumer, astrologer, and physician, a royal physician, and was actually a friend of Rumi's father.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he was a great influence on Rumi's poetry.
I know, and a lot of flowers, it seemed like, I think rose, wasn't it first distilled in the Middle East?
Yes. Well, we think so. It's kind of hard to say, but yeah, they're very ancient.
So there's attar, there's absolutes. What does auto mean?
Auto is just the only one that, for steam distilled rose. It's not used in any other plant. Just Rose Auto, is the steam distilled.
That's so fascinating. How do you use essential oils? It sounds like, I'm sure you use them all the ways you're talking, but what's an example of a way that you might, through, let's say, a typical day in Nadine Artemis's life with the essential oils?
Let's see. Well, we love putting them in our mop water. So that's how we'll clean the floors. And then we always have a spray bottle going with essential oils to, clean counters and that kind of thing. And then if we'll all bathe, and we have a beautiful body oil called the Best Skin Ever, or we'll use the Jai Baby Joy on the baby, which is all body oils with it, essential oils. And then I also infuse vanilla beans and jasmine flowers into a virgin coconut oil, which I use for some of the body oils. Yeah, and then if we just need, little tweaking for a little health or cold things, we'll, put some on our chest or up our noses. And if we're traveling, we'll definitely do that.
So they're good protectors and just for adding beauty and wonderfulness into our lives through the scents. It's amazing. Yeah. So let's get back, Nadine, and then I want to also talk about your company, Living Libations. Mm. What were some of the other essential oils that you would take to your desert island? Oh, yeah,
definitely Rose Auto, peppermint, Immortelle, I love.
Now, what is that? What is Immortelle?
That has a couple of names, that one. It's also known as Everlasting, or Helichrysum Metallicum is the Latin binomial, and that's distilled in Corsica. That's the true one. It always sells out. I have to reserve my liter of Immortelle a few years in advance every year. Yeah, and that's just a gorgeous one and such a healer, such a unique healer. Really beautiful for skincare.
So it's Immortelle or Everlast. Are those what type of flowers are they? Or is it the flower or the plant that they use?
Yeah, it's a flower, and it's a straw flower.
I thought so.
It's like a pretty common flower, and it will have a lot of derivatives. Like up here, it wouldn't be the same if we distilled it, but it's known as rabbit's tobacco.
So a straw flower just emitting this wonderful, or yielding this wonderful oil is so interesting to me.
Yeah, and it smells like so unique. It's just fascinating. So the Immortelle, Rose Otto, Peppermint, Cape Chamomile is like one of my new favorites in the past year. So for Cape Chamomile, one of my new favorites, there's Roman chamomile, which is lovely, and German chamomile, which is blue. And the Cape Chamomile is a different variety that's distilled in South Africa. And the smell is like berry apples, like berries and apples. And the color is actually like a pale aqua blue, kind of like in between a Roman and a German. It's just really its own thing. It's just gorgeous.
And it's so good for your skin, from what I've read.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now, I have some German chamomile at home, and it's blue. And I tried putting it on my face, and I looked a little blue. What could I do?
Yeah.
How would you use it?
All you have to do is dilute it a bit. So
Okay.
just dilute it in jojoba or olive oil, and then you can use it on your skin.
Okay. And blue isn't bad.
No, it's anti-inflammatory, and it's like one of the world's best anti-inflammatories. It's high in azulene and bisabolol.
I love that word.
I know. Yeah, it's a fun word.
What is it?
It's just one of the botanical chemical components, and what it is I don't know, but I just know that's what makes it anti-inflammatory.
That's so cool. Now, Nadine, you are rattling off these Latin names of plants, and you know about the chemical components of essential oils. Is this this is your passion, and you've turned your passion into a business called Living Libations. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, so back when I was graduating from university, and then I brought in all these beautiful essential oils into Canada because there weren't a lot of true distillations back then, just at the health food store. It was those kind of regular brands. So I was bringing them in, and they were very much desired. And so I thought, I'll open a store, and it will be totally real and natural and just like real aromatherapy, not this gift table stuff. So I did that on a really cool street in Toronto, Queen Street. It's kind of like our Soho district. And then all the formulations I'd been like playing with and making for my friends over the years, like waitress legs to help with varicose veins and things for pregnancy and all that, got their time, and they got to come out, and we had this beautiful blending bar where people could come up and grab a seat and get anything they want blended. And that was really fun. And I had a business partner, and then she wanted to move on, so we just thought, okay, we'll just close it. And I kind of felt like stores were going to kind of go anyway with the internet coming. So that closed in 99. And then I just continued to do what I do. It was a little bit smaller for a while, and then I met Ron, my main man, and he was so excited to play. And I was like, well, I've taken what I love and made it into a business before. And I was like, sometimes it can get pretty serious when you just want to play with the plants. And then you've got to think of like lawyers, accountants, and all that kind of stuff, and like liability insurance and all those fun words. So I said, well, we've got to keep it fun, and it's got to be as serious as a lemonade stand. And then we started making so many fun things with the food and essential oils and different culinary things. And we were playing a lot with eating adaptogenic herbs.
And tell our listeners what that means, in case they don't know.
Yeah, what does that mean? Those are the herbs that have really no toxic nature and are really, you could eat them as far as you can go because there's not like a buildup. And so really to us that means food. They are food. So we started making all these fun things and working a lot with maca and goji berries and different plants and flowers. And we really wanted to create beautiful food that was made and yet not that feeling of being manufactured where sort of there's a mindset where if you're manufacturing something, you kind of have to start like trimming the corners and, not making the best decisions. But we wanted to crack open the vanilla beans and scrape them open and put that into the food and really kind of in one level make the most expensive food choices we could make.
High quality.
Yeah, high quality. And so that's what we did. But the great thing is our friend, who's a great nutritionist, David Wolf, came to our door. Actually, the first time we met him, and he said, eat this. And he dipped this bean into honey. And it was a raw, unroasted, organic, heirloom cacao bean. Wow, that's pretty cool.
That opened doors for you, I think.
That opened major doors, yes. And so we started hooking up with some farmers in Ecuador that had a beautiful thing going on. It was all shade-grown, and there's our support of buying their beans created solar panels in the village, and it was really great. So we started working with that. And then some advances were made in, like, we'll call it the raw cacao genre, like raw cacao powder and raw cacao butter. And we thought, well, the cacao powder would certainly make it easier because Ron was, like, grinding all the beans by hand on a stone metate. And it was just like, no, we can't use the powder because it didn't have as much life force. It's certainly a fine, normal food, but it just didn't have the levity. Mm-hmm. And then also what we understood intuitively, for lack of a better word, was that the cacao butter, once separated from the bean, is a solid fat at room temperature and kind of needed to be with the beans for this ultimate experience of the bean, and that in ancient Mesoamerica and Aztec way, we were pretty sure they weren't separating the butter and then putting it back in.
Interesting.
So to this day, we make the only chocolate in the world without powder and without the cacao butter.
Well, on your website, I was reading about these rave reviews of your chocolate. Can you describe to some of the listeners, like, some of the names of your chocolate bars and what's in them?
Yeah, they're really, like, all kind of a trip on their own. And then we combine them with the adaptogenic herbs. And so the thing about the cacao is it's a really beautiful plant, high in magnesium and really good for the digestive system, and really quite the opposite of anything that would be fattening, truly, truly. So once combined with the adaptogenic herbs and some of the essences, the cacao bean becomes this vehicle to deliver the herbs to the cells, and it makes the other herbs very bioavailable. And so we have a fun expression that we say that our chocolate is the love child of Willy Wonka and Mary Poppins dancing in the rainforest, singing, "A spoonful of chocolate helps the plant medicine go down," in the most delightful way.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so cute. And, that's one thing what drew me to your company was I got one of your emails and it said, "This is the dawning of the age of hilarious."
Oh, yeah.
Which it does seem like your products are infused not only with healthful whole foods, but also with fun. So
we have a lot of fun making them.
Maybe give us the names of a couple of your Willy Wonka and Mary Poppins inspired chocolate bars.
Yes, well, we have Open Laughing, which is with goji berries and E3 Live as some of the ingredients. All together now cacao, which is like our peppermint patty one. Purple Chocolate Jesus, named after a Tom Waits song, combined with a really rich antioxidant of a heirloom purple corn. More Than a Feeling is the Benedict There You Are chocolate bar with cherries and maca root and raspberries.
That is so cool. So people are eating chocolate, but also getting these adaptogenic herbs. Is that how you say it?
That's how you say it, exactly.
And so you're infusing, it sounds like you're really infusing the food that you're selling with the herbs, and then your essential oils are, messengers of the plants and herbs as well. Sure. So Nadine, the chocolate sounds amazing. The essential oils sound beautiful. Could you tell us, what else does Living Libations offer?
Living Libations also offers what we call Renegade Beauty, which is like all the fun potions you can put on your skin. And I love simplicity, so I really keep things simple and make the most potent, beautiful products. And you can kind of I've got things, you can just buy one bottle and it will do like your whole care for the whole family. So I keep it really simple. And I also do botanical formulating. I consult also with companies that want to, upgrade their line or really make it more natural or understand some of the ingredients they're using.
Which is a very useful thing to do, especially for the cosmetics in the U.S. I did an interview with someone from the Skin Deep website, and it's pretty shocking what can be in conventional cosmetics. chemicals.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's truly mind-blowing.
So Nadine, with your chocolates and essential oils, it sounds like you're really inspired from the plants. And I'm wondering, I've interviewed Gabriel Howarth and Stephen Herod Buhner, who are plant people who really talk a lot about the energies of the plants and kind of the plants presenting them with information and inspiration. Have you had that experience at all?
Yeah, I say that, and I also feel like it's also so commonplace, the communication. I think sometimes, and I love their work as well, the communication, sometimes I think we're looking for this, like, moment, and we're trying to recognize it. Just for anybody that's going out into the woods, it's almost like you want to bang your head against a tree, and you're like, okay, talk to me. But I think our communication with them is almost unrecognizable, and it is always going on, because really we exist in relation to everything. And if we allow it, nature can really embody our lives. And that's just, I just love that. And so every moment, you can gather some kind of information from a plant and have some kind of communion with a plant. And people always ask me, like, where and how did you learn? And I've got to say, like, it really was by osmosis and really through listening with what we call, like, listening through the spirit ear. As the soil receives the seed, you can also receive a lot of information from the plant creatures.
And we're breathing in, really, when you think about it, we're breathing in plants' waste product, oxygen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we
like to say the tree exhales, and so we live.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's true. So Nadine, I was first heard of your company when I received an email from Botanical Preservation Corps, and they were talking about how you and Ron were arrested at the airport. Could you tell our listeners about that amazing tale?
Yes. That, and as we say, the chocolate is a vehicle that will deliver you somewhere. So
you didn't think to
find
jail,
ourselves on the way to States, and actually I was on my way to do some formulating. And we were just, our bags were being inspected, and of course to us, the chocolate is like food. So we travel with a couple pounds because we were going to be away for a couple weeks. We eat it every day for breakfast, and of course would have some to share. And they were very suspicious of the chocolate, but things were going well until this guy just pulled everything away and had it inspected. All of a sudden there's dogs and scales and things going on behind a screen. They pulled us over to say they'd found traces of a narcotic substance in our stuff. And, at that point we were pretty sure it was a chocolate, but we weren't sure at all what was going on. We didn't know if, something was just even planted in our suitcase. We were truly shocked and dumbfounded.
And you were with your 6-month-old baby, right?
Yeah, that's a really unfortunate part. So we had to wait for the RCMP to come and arrest us. They told us the RCMP was coming, and that was a really hard moment because they had to they took Leaf out of Ron. Leaf was sleeping on Ron's chest, and they took him away. They said they would bring him back, but meanwhile they whisked us away in handcuffs and thoroughly interrogated us, and it was very serious charges because they said we were trafficking a controlled substance. So this is like way beyond personal possession. This is like, we've got a business set up for trafficking and going into the United States. So it was a very serious charge. Eventually we were processed with, bail and promises to appear court, and of course got Leaf back after a little bit.
How traumatic.
Yeah, at that point, we really didn't know what was going on. And we thought, well, is it the hemp? I mean, because we use hemp seeds as instead of a dairy to create a bit of a creaminess in the chocolate bar. And we thought, well, it's legal, but, maybe there's just something left over where the dogs can't separate the seed from the thing, and they're still smelling that. We just didn't get it. Our chocolate went to forensics, and 3 weeks later, we were totally cleared, charges dismissed. And then when they called to dismiss us, they said, well, there's these NIC tests, and they went purple, so there's got to be something in your chocolate. Or this was the lovely dismissal they gave, or you must have smoked a joint before you got to the airport. That was their apology.
And so this is the NIC drug testing kit. So it's NIK drug testing kits, and this is what they're using at airports to test?
Airports, high schools, patrol cars. Every unit would have one. Every station would have them. They're called presumptive field testing kits, and I think that, they're trying to have an extra tool on the scene of the crime, so to speak, to help discern what is going on. And what we came to understand is that the dogs are sniffing out sort of actively enzymatic substances, and then if that kind of makes the dog excited, then they'll bring in the testing kits for further examination. If it was a consumer product like a pregnancy test with this many false positives, they would be fixing it by now. But we were free to travel again and had some more fun things to do in the States, so we got an immigration lawyer to really be above board and to go through all the proper channels. And he went ahead. He said, these people are coming across the border. We inspected to be inspected. And so we went through that. So the first thing they said they have to have the dogs go over our car because this time we drove in. And the first thing the dog found was tea tree oil. And they were like, what's this? And we're like, tea tree oil. And they're like, no, it can't be. It's turning, like, making the test turn purple. It's got to be like hash oil. And it's not. It's not. It's clear. It smells like tea tree oil. So then they went through everything. And, of course, even my small amount of toiletries do contain interesting things. And the frankincense also turned up to be THC. Mm-hmm. And the chocolate, which the lawyer, we had paperwork for the chocolate, but, of course, the chocolate's still turning funny. And they didn't care about our paperwork. So we had another 8-hour deliberation as they decided what to do. We had eyeball to eyeball with the FBI agents trying to see if they were telling the truth. And eventually what they decided was they would let the mother and child go home across the border, but they would Ron take the rap for the family. So, of course, he did. And luckily we had lawyers on speed dial at this time, so we really knew, the whole thing. And we were able to set Ron up with a great New York lawyer. And this time we knew it was the NIC test because they were everything in my toiletry bag they were pulling and testing. They had 40 kits. And they kept going, but it turned purple. It turned purple. So the interesting thing that we came to understand is really everybody's doing their job, but there's this test that's turning purple. And I think it's kind of going against their gut instincts because it just wasn't adding up that we would be traffickers. No. And yet this thing was turning purple. Plus, and this was their tool.
And plus, if you were traffickers and you had just gotten busted in Canada, you wouldn't have been the brightest traffickers to try again so soon. So ridiculous. That's what we would say. We and it's like our bust in Canada was really for the U.S. We were in Canadian soil, so the Canadians were taking us from the U.S. Customs. So it was still like a U.S. issue. They knew about it, and even though we had all the paperwork. So then we find out more things, like somebody was arrested a year ago, spent 3 days in jail for their Castile soap because the NIC test turned purple. And then in August, a man spent 2 months in jail because the NIC test turned purple. This one was for cocaine. So what we came to understand is that these tests are proving a lot of false positives. And then we did a lot of studies at home because you can order them online. And we found that all chocolate turns purple. Wow.
Yeah, and even newspaper fibers turn purple.
That is amazing. So chocolate, tea tree oil, it sounds like, and newspaper, shredded up newspaper comes out positive.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? What did you do?
Well, 3 weeks ago, Ron was actually just exonerated. It took a bit longer for his stuff to go through in the state. So everything's dismissed, cleared. We're free. We have no record. We are, pure and clean. And so now we're just working with the Bronners and the ACLU to see if we can evolve some of this testing and just sort of evolve, I'm sure it's still a useful tool, but right now it has the power to arrest, even though it's not admissible in court. But that's the thing, is a lot of people are ending up in jail for even 2 months or several days.
So you're working with the Bronner Soap Company people?
That's been really neat. They're really, really, really great company.
Well, what an ordeal. And it actually has given you more publicity and it sounds like the chocolate is going to help you change this unjust practice.
Yeah, it's been an interesting tale that we had found ourselves in. It was quite the adventure for sure.
I know. I couldn't believe it when I saw the email from BPC. I was like, what? People were arrested for chocolate, for raw cacao. It amazed me.
Yeah.
It was a sign of the time in the drug war.
For sure. Yeah, and like there's been a change in presidency since all this has happened, and I think it is a leftover thing from the drug war, or whatever that is, because I think they wanted an easy way to like round up suspicious people, but I think it's just like they're fishing for tuna and getting all the dolphins.
Oh my goodness! Well, I'm glad that your name has been cleared. Because amazing. It just is interesting to me, like tea tree oil showing up positive. That makes no sense to me.
Tea tree, frankincense, rosemary, and oregano. So I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what they have in common.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Nadine, if someone is listening right now and they would love to find out more about your products and more about your essential oils and your philosophy of life, which I loved all the essays on your website and the links to your newsletter, how could they find you on the web?
Well, they can go to our website at livinglibations.com, and we also have a couple of videos on YouTube.
Oh, cool. And how would we find those?
Those are, I think you can just plug in Living Libations on YouTube, and we have one, like a skincare one, and one that really goes through oral care, which is really fun. And you can also see a bit of our land in the background.
That sounds lovely. The pictures look beautiful on your site. Are you going to be teaching courses at all in aromatherapy or living foods anytime in the future? Or would that be up on your website when those courses?
Yeah, well, we do have some things in the summer here. And then what I'm also going to do is like some more videos and some more online downloads, because I think that's a really fun way to reach a lot of people in a more of a live format.
That's great. That sounds wonderful, Nadine. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. And I look forward to keeping track of your work, and hopefully we'll see you when you come to California.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. For more information or to hear our other podcasts or interviews, visit www.sustainableworldradio.com. Sustainable World Radio is produced by Jill Cloutier. Music by Dana Lyons. Thanks for listening.